Szakowski, and the topic that we're discussing today is winning in CIS Logistics Market despite the complexity in the supply chain. Christoph, can you first provide an introduction about yourself?
Hi, Dusty. My name is Christoph Szakowski, and I have been acting for a couple of years as managing partner of LogCon East as consultant and interim manager, mainly for logistics providers in Central and Eastern Europe and emerging markets. Prior to that, I learned how to develop, transform, restructure business of 3PL providers in commercial, operational, and general management roles with DB Schenker and Logwin AG. So it was also DB Schenker where I had my first responsibility for Russia. It was back in 2004. Russia belonged at that time to one of the trade lanes in Eastern Europe. I had the target to significantly develop together with commercial and key account teams. This role was based in Frankfurt, Germany. Then a few years later, after I accomplished this task, I have received a new invitation for the same company, this time for joining the directors board in Russia, in Moscow. There, for 3 years, I was in charge for the strategy, operations, and commercial leadership of a diversified business unit. This unit was providing several blue chips companies and local clients with cross-border transportation, customs brokerage, project cargo solutions, rail service, and global sport event solutions in Russia and in the trade lanes to and from Russia. And my last experience, let's say, in the CIS environment, I gained as interim chief operating officer at Astra AG, which is a Switzerland-based logistics provider with a strong background in countries of the region we are talking about today, and a remarkable footprint in the East-West transportation.
Provide a description of the CIS logistics market.
Yes, first of all, a remark. I use the word CIS just to give a short description to a region consisting of several countries like Russia, Ukraine, Kazakhstan, Belarus, Azerbaijan, Armenia, and others. I know some people might have another wording for the region, but let us agree here to use this description for countries where Russian is the language spoken and which are located in Eurasia. So the total logistics market value for this region is estimated to be by 105 billion euro. Very important is that out of this, only about 20% is outsourced transportation services. So only a fifth of the market is in hand or in control of logistics providers and transportation companies. This is quite a huge market potential to be captured. In the European market, it's about 65%, which is outsourced, and in China, it's about 50%. So this creates space for developing services, even though there are constraints to grow, something I come back to speak about later. How about looking at the Russian logistics market in comparison to another emerging markets? Considering the Agility Emerging Market Logistics Index for this year, Russia is in position 10th out of 50 countries. and scores about 23% less than China, which is the leader. So apparently, business environment, their infrastructure, regulations, market size make it for you as a company in the Russian business maybe by 20% or so harder to be successful than in China. But actually, the ranking of Russia is on the same level like for the Turkish market, for example, which is currently rather popular with logistics companies and investors. So last but not least, if you consider the CIS market, you need to see that having established as a player there, you have a great position in the transit corridor from China to Europe and Europe to China. So you can win not only in the traditionally strong domestic transportation market in countries like Russia, but also in cross-border transportation by road and by rail. There you have a huge potential in many industries like consumer, industrials, automotive, electronics, chemicals, oil and gas for project business.
What makes supply chains in this region so complex and challenging?
There are three aspects I would like to underline here. An example of Russia. The first reason for the complexity is there is, in long term, high probability of economical crisis, energy prices, turbulences, strong currencies, instabilities. Actually, in a long term, let us say 7 to 10 years, you can simply anticipate such turbulences. Your supply chain strategy as a retailer, for example, needs to consider that consumption might be pushed down dramatically as first reaction. On the other side, real estate infrastructure, for example, in the region of Moscow, might become or is becoming now by far cheaper compared to the situation before the last crisis. So you can significantly save your real estate costs, whether you have your own distribution facilities or you have outsourced it to your provider. And in the meantime, the consumption is increasing when economy stabilizes. And then you might end up with higher operational efficiency, streamlined networks and transportation operations. But again, this advantage you only will gain if you have the patience to stay long enough in this market. The second point, which makes managing your supply chain, managing your cost and time really hard, is that there is only a small number of high quality logistics providers and thousands of low cost carriers. So let us say your decision whether and to whom outsource your supply chain operations might be restricted to a few players if you want to achieve a high level service, reliable delivery times, value-added services, etc. Or you have a huge selection once you want to go for the cheapest company with all the risk, of cargo damage or loss, no information, bad customer service or transit delays, which might be huge in the largest country of the world. And the third point, which has strong impact on managing supply chain, is the human factor. That is something I mentioned in earlier discussions with you, and which might require to make it a special topic again. To put it in a nutshell, you need to build up a very trustful hierarchy and a chain of decision and command for people in the supply chain, including different official authorities, your partners, your suppliers, your 3PL providers, your carriers. Actually, then and only then you will win finally managing successfully your supply chain.
And can you talk about what should cooperation between retailers and manufacturers, as well as the 3PL providers, be based on?
Sure. What is the basic thing? From the point of view of a 3PL provider, they need to be well prepared for the discussion and negotiations with their clients. They should know in which areas they can partner with in an outsourcing project to increase the operational efficiency of the network, improve delivery KPIs, etc. According to some research and also our projects, 3PLs can, for example, shorten the time from order to delivery by 20% and save by 15% the total logistics costs. But it needs, first of all, an open discussion and also the readiness of the retailer or manufacturer to create an evaluation system of the 3PL providers. They also need to decide on the priority areas and define a standard service level agreement. What is also needed is quite an amount of contractual paperwork and agreement and agreements, and also the negotiation process takes a little bit longer. And you need, of course, to maintain the control steadily and the professional evaluation on the whole cooperation on both sides. So a good, profitable cooperation needs here to follow a systematic approach and openness to discuss the whole aspects of supply chain and logistics.
This question is, can you provide any personal stories or any recommendations that you have?
Yes, quite good here will be probably not one specific story, but just a reflection on my time and being directly involved in the Russian or the CIS logistics markets. I believe that has been a huge lesson about dealing with a large market with its big chances and an absolute amazing spectrum of people you meet or work with. I think as long as you consult or steer from a head office abroad, or so, you can apply your skills and your brain, and that is enough. But once you start to be living and working in the CIS market, you need to apply quite large amount of emotions and people understanding and personal leadership. I make my lessons, and I feel with any new similar project which is coming now, how important those skills, those experiences, successes and drawbacks have been. My recommendation is, despite of the complexity of the supply chain and further challenges, to really dive into these markets. This is probably one of the best leadership lessons you can have in real business. Companies interested in the CIS market and seeking for advice in any particular areas of logistics and management can, of course, contact me on LinkedIn. I would be looking forward to support.
Christoph, for sharing today.
You're welcome.